Hey everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today. We're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in health IT. And today's guest is Matty Gill. He's CEO at AION Labs. Welcome, Matty.
Thank you, John. Great to be here.
Yeah, excited to learn more about what you're doing and the great work you're doing over there in Israel, and dive into some topics that are really important. And I think it sounds like a unique approach to be able to investing and supporting the ecosystem. But before we go there, tell us a little bit about yourself and Ion Labs.
So thanks, John. And I was born in the United States, moved to Israel about 30 years ago or so. Came from Ohio, so I'm a tortured Cleveland sports fan. But we did get at least one win in basketball. But
Yeah.
since then, so I got LeBron here behind me. And since then, I've been living in Israel. And over the last around 15 years, I've been an executive in the biopharma ecosystem here in Israel. For a little over 10 years at Teva Pharmaceuticals, where I was in the headquarters here and part of management, which is based out of Israel, the leading pharmaceutical provider in the world. Probably a little known fact that it's actually based from and came from Israel. And then I was part of a team that founded AION Labs, which is a first in kind venture studio where we actually create new startups for that bring AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning and computational technologies into drug discovery and development. And we do it in a way that we're working with four pharma partners. So Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Merck, Teva, together with Amazon, two venture capital firms, all working together to generate new startups that each one of them will bring in computational technologies and AI to be able to tackle some of the biggest research challenges that the drug industry faces these days.
Wow, that's quite the combination you have there, right? Which I think
Yeah,
is probably necessary in the space to really make
yeah.
the impact that we want. I find it interesting because AI is being applied everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere in our lives. But I think that's specifically true in pharma. It seems like one of the big places you're, investing AI in is around the discovery of new drugs. What are some of the key discovery challenges that pharma companies currently face?
Well, John, as you know quite well, that it takes well over 10 years to be able to discover and approve a new drug. And even if we have more drugs approved per year than we've ever had in the past, it still takes well over 10 years, on average, around $2 billion of investment, because 90% of those attempts fail. So when you actually bring a drug to test it out first in humans, you have about a 10% chance of success. And we're really only targeting a small fraction of the potential diseases and targets to be able to treat them with a drug. And there's multiple diseases because people are living longer lives and much longer than they ever have been. There's multiple diseases that we haven't yet been able to treat still with the disease that are becoming more prevalent with therapeutics. So what we're doing here at ION Labs is first focusing on exactly the question that you presented, which is what are the biggest problems and challenges? And we work with our pharma experts and our R&D scientists to actually ask them exactly that. What would, if we solved through AI, would be the basis of a problem statement that would be the foundation of a great new startup? And that could be in one of four segments. It could be in the segment of how do we understand new bring new insights into disease mechanisms so that we can actually discover new targets that we can drug, the undruggable targets. Secondly, is how do we discover new drugs in a much rapider process, much cheaper process, much higher predictable process, but also to be able to discover new drugs using artificial intelligence and big data analysis to be able to conduct that drug discovery in a much rapider, cheaper process. And then third is the preclinical process. So how do we prepare a potential candidate for clinical trials based upon potentially replacing animal trials down the road, being able to simulate the way it'll work so that we have a higher predictability of success about whether a drug will be toxic and effective before it goes into clinical trials to help executives choose which are the right ones to bet on. And then last but not least, throughout that whole stage, which is, the most expensive portion of drug development, throughout those whole stages of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, how do we help pharma companies bring those potential drugs to approval by the FDA and then ultimately to patients, to bring hope to new patients by helping them to fail less? So designing the trial in the right way, simulating it where possible. How do we use data capabilities? Because it doesn't make sense that only 10% of those attempts should succeed after we've already started to try them out and received initial results. So that's what we're really trying to decipher, is where on that whole value chain, from the way we understand diseases through drug discovery all the way through approval, where in that value chain of the pharmaceutical drug development can we bring in AI in an effective manner to help improve those chances of success and to really drive value and capture some of that value in the chain?
I mean, I'm from Vegas, and the worst gambling there is 40%, right? Like 10%.
The
That's
house
a
always
challenge,
wins,
right?
John. Yeah, yeah.
Obviously,
The
the
house
impact's a
always
lot
wins.
different of the investment, but that's
Yeah.
interesting. When I hear you talk about this, is pharma data rich, or are we missing the data that we need to be able to execute this? I mean, that's a pretty expansive vision. And I know we have a lot of data, right? But is it the right data? Is it enough data? Is it accessible data? Talk to us about that. Is the data available to execute the vision that you're describing?
So the data exists. I think one of the challenges that pharma companies have is it's not necessarily organized in a manner that it's able to be accessible easily for startups to be able to test it out on. So a lot of the pharma companies are actually dealing internally with how do they organize and prepare the data effectively. And some of them, like my former company, Teva, have also been built through mergers and acquisitions and grown through
Sure.
mergers and acquisitions. So there's that whole IT integration portion, which is a huge challenge internally in its own right. And you might have data from one source that isn't necessarily compatible with the other ones. They're not organized in that manner. And it wasn't always at the forefront of internal executives' prioritization, is how do we take this data internally of past clinical trials, which didn't necessarily seem urgent at the moment. So then it wasn't necessarily highly prioritized because they didn't realize what a data mine and really a gold set that they're sitting on at that point. Right now, they
It wasn't a
understand that.
gold mine
So
then, right? We didn't have the tools to
right, and they
actually,
didn't know what it would be at
mine it.
that point, right? So yeah, they didn't know what it would be that it would be at some point. So, and the longer, as in the IT world, the longer you leave those type of data sets unattended, the harder it becomes to organize them down the road. It's just like pushing off your homework for so long, and then it piles up, and at some point it becomes you forget how to even deal with it. So, and you don't have necessarily the right tools to. So right now, a lot of the pharma companies are dealing with that exact challenge because now it's pretty evident that those data sets are a gold mine and should be able to be mined internally. And one of our conversations, pretty much with any pharma R&D company, is there should be a startup out there that just helps us organize our own data, right? So that's number one: is that you have the internal challenge that pharma companies are dealing with and starting to make them more accessible. But really, John, you're hitting on a key point, is that what we're trying to do here at AION Labs is connect people that are experts in AI and algorithmic computational sciences with companies that at their core, at their DNA, are from the biology field or from life sciences. And pun intended, they don't necessarily speak the same DNA, right? In that sense, they don't come from the same scientific background. And so what we're trying to do here in AION Labs is saying, okay, we want to bring people that really know how to deal with those data sets. And the people that pharma companies see pitch them all the time saying, if you just give us your data sets, we can bring you the moon and the stars. Well, pharma companies and executives have become smart enough not to necessarily trust that in advance. So what we're seeing from the pharma R&D side is that they actually want to co-develop with these startups. They understand they need them, but they don't want to just give their data over to a black box and hope for a good answer down the road. So what they're trying to do is actually have a conversation and co-develop with these people and saying, okay, tell us your idea on what you're going to do with the data. And then from day one, we're going to work together with you on developing your technology in a manner that can actually do what you're promising to do. And we're going to help you do that. So just to give you an example, we established a startup here in AION Labs under the challenge that we posed of how do we discover new therapeutic antibodies de novo? And how do we design new therapeutic antibodies in silico on a computer using computational technologies? And we came without the presumption that we knew how to solve that challenge. Because again, we're bringing that from the pharma company saying there must be a way to do this. But we want to actually find smart people that are computational biologists, structural biologists, physicists, AI experts. They're the ones that are going to tell us how to do this. And then we're going to work with them. So we found an excellent scientist that came from Embol. He's not Israeli, came from Embol to build a company in Israel, built a strong team. It's called de novo Bio. He ended up using that name, called it de novo Bio. And he's now working with the experts, the heads of computational biology and structural biology from AstraZeneca, from Merck, from Pfizer, from Teva, with the input from Amazon, and all the support needed to be able to work with them to validate the technological approaches he's developed, to code it, then validate it, reiterate it, and actually develop this technology in a manner that they will then trust it. And that's really what we're trying to do here, is to work together from day one to develop these technologies.
Well, that's a big final point, right? That they'll trust it, right? There's a lot of people who invest, but if they're not going to accept it, that's a big deal. And it's interesting you said that ION is a venture studio. What does that
Yeah.
mean, venture studio wise? Talk about your mission, and you mentioned many of your partners, how invested are they in your effort? It sounds like it's pretty deeply invested if they're behind the people that you're working with. But talk to us about that mission and what a venture studio is.
Sure, John. So Venture Studio, there's others like us out there. There's a few in Boston, like Flagship Pioneering, Third Rock, that you might know of. In Israel, there's one called Team 8 that's very prominent in the financial and cyber tech, as well as now going into digital health, not in bio, because it's very different bio from any other type of high tech. Our venture studio is doing something somewhat different. Usually a venture studio is run by a VC. We said we're going to run it by a professional team that's working with VCs, but also with pharma companies and Amazon from day one to be able to build these startups. And really what a venture studio does is build startups. So not just going to seek for investment opportunities, but actually working to build the startups. And we are the co-founders, de facto, of these startups, together with the scientist founders that we go out and find to build the startups and to lead the startups. And we provide them with all the necessary support, funding, data, expertise, mentoring, administrative support, all the founder support that we can provide them so they can focus on their science and technology and bring their startup to a place where they're actually able to validate with our pharma partners that it works, and then go on to raise their next rounds and continue to grow as a startup. So we work in two models. Up until now, we have a pre-seed model, an ION building model, where first, like I said before, we really crystallize what is a problem statement that will be the foundation of a future startup. Without the solution, we know what the desired potential outcome is, because that's part of our process in defining the challenge. But we define a challenge, we define a problem statement. And this is in accordance with the methodology that we brought in from our strategic partners, Biomedics out of Germany, that have been doing this for 10 plus years, and have also worked very prominently in recent years to build up a similar institute at Yale University in the United States. And we basically run this problem definition process. Our investment committee, which is made up of the leaders of the organizations that are partnering in AION Labs, selects up to 4 challenges like that per year. And then we go out and share it with the world. We have one open right now. Anyone that's interested can look on our website. We have an open call for applications to build a new startup. And what we do is then We seek out scientist founders that can come from an AI discipline or a bio discipline that come with an idea. And all they need to have is a concept and the right background, how to solve that challenge. And we review them and select 15 individuals, invite them to come here to our site here in AION Labs, across the street from the Weizmann Institute here in Israel. Some of the best scientific capabilities have come out of this neighborhood in the world. And we work with them for a week in a workshop to actually provide them with a lot of feedback on their idea, evaluate their capabilities, evaluate the leadership skills or coachability, as well as their concept. And ultimately, everyone pitches to our investment committee. And at the end of that week, we choose one. And that one team or person, scientist founder, we then give them at least $1 million in a pre-seed investment to build a new startup together with us, providing them with everything that they need in order to remove as many of the barriers as possible for success of AI and drug discovery and development, for them to be able to go on and grow and build a great startup. Our mission really is to help bring AI into drug discovery and development so that we could bring cure to patients throughout the world, and to build great startups, and of course to help strengthen the ecosystem here in Israel that we're all working out of.
Sure. That's a fascinating process. You mentioned one company that came out of AION Labs. Are there some other companies you've launched? Talk to us about that, and let's
Yeah,
also hear more about the challenge that you have. That you
sure.
just mentioned. What are some of the details there?
Yeah, sure. So we've launched built 5 startups since we started about 2 years ago. And just to give you another example, in addition to Denovi Bio, which is based on science and license technology that came out of Embol from Europe, founded by Kashif Sadiq, was a senior scientist there. We've also established a complementary startup in optimization of antibodies. So if I am able to actually bring an antibody, how do I build a machine learning platform to actually evaluate where we need to optimize that antibody in order to make it into a more effective drug? Now, this goes to the heart of what we're doing here, because pharma companies know how to make a drug. They've been doing it for decades. If you give them a target that's effective and you actually know the right compound and know how that compound should be built, they can take it through clinical trials. It's expensive, but they know how to make a drug and improve it. They've been doing it. They're experts at it, right? So
Sure.
what they wanted help on, and what these R&D executives came to us with, is how do we now take an antibody and make it into an effective drug? Show me exactly where the points are that I need to fix it, and I need to optimize it so that it will ultimately become an effective drug. And Combinable is led by 2 excellent founders, one who comes from a structural biology background, again, coming from Germany. Her name is Daria Koch, had been working in an academic background, didn't necessarily have all the business and entrepreneurship background, but she has an excellent scientific background. So when she comes to found her company in AION Labs, we provide her with all the entrepreneurial and business backgrounds so she can focus on the science that she's very passionate about. And then matched her up again to talk about the different scientific disciplines with Noam Katz, who's an Israeli, has a typical Israeli tech background, never worked a day in bio, had no biological background, but he's really an expert at AI, wrote the book on the history of AI that's here behind me.
Wow.
He really understands AI, machine learning, all the different type of disciplines of that. And then they work together on how to build the right platform that can be applied for biological and antibody optimization. And that's what they're doing now. They've recruited a very strong team working right outside my office here in the labs here in AION Labs. And they have $1 million in a pre-seed investment, working very effectively, don't have a lot of costs, and are able to actually start seeing results that we're going to be able to bring to future investors to come and invest in. But we have another startup called Tenasis, right? To go to your Vegas background, they actually called it's in molecular glues, so it's a play on both tenacity, right? That's
Uh-huh.
of the glue, but also the guy's a blackjack player, so he called it 10 aces, basically, and it's actually
Love
spelled
it.
that way. And he's a Dutch molecular biologist that came to address one of our challenges. How do I use AI to actually discover new molecular glues? that can work with pharma companies that are our partners in order to develop the drugs of their targets for their targets that they actually have in a proprietary manner, but then to also develop his own assets and pipeline down the road, and has a great team of Israelis that working with him, again, an AI expert that's leading up their AI, and a structural biologist that just graduated from the Weizmann Institute. And those are the type of companies we're trying to form. So right now we have an open challenge right now that anyone can apply to. We'll fly you over from Vegas, we'll fly you over from Utah, we'll fly you over from anywhere in the world. We've had actually candidates come here from 5 out of the 7 continents. We haven't yet had
Wow.
Antarctica, and neither from Australia. But
There's
everywhere
some
else we
stuff
have,
happening in Antarctica. Probably not, but
well, hopefully, at least we'll get Australians here, because that's one of the continents we haven't had from. But we've had 70 candidates come through here. Some have actually come through twice, so it's, it should be a little bit more than 70, but ultimately it's been 70 because we've had some return candidates. So they have a great time and they learned a lot here. And roughly half from Israel, half from abroad. It's a great opportunity. The workshop will be here in June, and it's going to be focused on how do I find small molecules and RNA targets that can actually bind together, so that we can find drugs that can treat previously undruggable targets. And they're going to be working with some of the best experts in the field from AstraZeneca, Merck, and others that will be able to actually provide them with a lot of feedback. And it's quite an experience. We never see a candidate finishing that week, even if they don't win, that's unhappy that they actually spent the week with us here.
interesting. So there's no cost to submit. They just submit their experience.
Yeah, and
Is
we
that the
respect that
submission
if they have an
process?
idea, we don't steal it from them. So if they have an idea and ultimately they want to keep it proprietary and come back to them, we sign a commitment to them that there's no cost to them, there's no risk to them. They come over here, spend a week in Israel. John, you're welcome to apply also. I don't know if you've ever been to Israel, but you're welcome to apply as well. We show them Jerusalem. We give them the best hummus and falafel in the country, probably some of the best in the world. You might gain a few kilos or a few pounds, but you'll ultimately have a great week with us here. And in June, the weather's perfect, not too hot, not too cold. So happy to have you over here.
I mean, I have been and I loved every minute and can't wait to go back. So I'm all
So you're
for that.
welcome to come.
And the
You're welcome
foods
to
and
come.
markets and the Tel Aviv beach, it's
Yeah.
amazing. So it's great. How do you see these companies kind of evolving within ION? Is it something you want to invest long term, or are you kind of the incubator and then they're going to graduate, if you will, to bigger things? How are you approaching the evolution of these
Yeah.
companies?
So it's an excellent question, because just like with your kids, right? Ultimately, you have to. Hopefully, they're going to leave the house at some point
Yeah,
and free up
that's
some
the
space.
goal.
So, yeah. So we want them to graduate from ION Labs. For us, the KPIs and my personal KPIs is that they're able to actually reach their scientific milestones and deliver on the promise that we're asking them to deliver on. And by definition, if they're able to do that to fund and reach their fundamental milestones, we're building up a whole network of investors here that come to see them, so that they're going to be able to raise their next rounds and continue to grow independently and graduate from us. Now, they'll always be part of our community, but ultimately the companies that are successful here, we want them to graduate and go on and continue as growth startups, and we'll provide them with all the support that they need in order to get to that point. And of course, like in any startup entity, some will succeed. We give them up to 2 years to do that. But as a venture student, you also got to take decisions, and tough ones, even at that, together with the founders, and bring conversations. And we've had to do that once as well, out of the 5 startups that we've done, and say, this one really isn't working. The problem statement wasn't clear enough. The technology is not developing into a VC fundable, viable product. Let's take a decision, so we're not wasting these people's times that probably could be making huge salaries out there as AI experts, and we don't want to waste their time. Don't want to waste our own resources and shut down a project if it's not working. So that we have these frank conversations. But out of the 5 we've started, 4 are working well, proceeding very well, right on track, hitting their milestones. One's even raised an additional $3 million in addition to the one that we gave them. The others raised, there's another that's raised 2 and on the track to raise a full seed round. So we're seeing that they're getting traction and going to be able to grow at a pace that they'll become independent, and then we'll remain as invested in them, both emotionally but also financially, in their success, and wish them the best of luck and continue to support them accordingly.
That's awesome. You mentioned some of the unique characteristics of Israel. Why did you choose to base it in Israel and talk
Yeah,
about some of the benefits? I know when I visited, I was amazed
yeah,
at the biopharma aspects of it, and I saw some reports when I was there, and when I spoke at an event and saw how big the pharma industry is. From the U.S. perspective, we certainly see Israel as very innovative in the tech side, and also in the pharma. But talk to us about that, the choice to be in
yeah,
Israel
sure.
and some of the benefits.
Yeah. So I think, Israel has a lot of great ingredients to go into us being a thriving biotech ecosystem. We could talk about a few. So, what do you need in order to have a strong biotech ecosystem? First and foremost, you need talented individuals. So, we have some of the best research going on, again, right across the street here at the Weitzman Institute, which you can see from my window. But you also have everywhere from the Technion up north and Haifa, which is some of the best, Israel's MIT, some of the best engineering and AI capabilities are coming out of there in the world, all the way through Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv University, Bar Ilan, all the way through Weitzman and Beersheba in the south. So you have some great academic research going on here in Israel across all life sciences as well as technological disciplines here. And some of the most cutting edge research is coming out of here, including 9 blockbuster drugs that have actually went on within the 75 years that our country's existed, have went on to sell for over $1 billion per year, coming out of IP that's come from those same universities that I just mentioned. For first and foremost, from the Weitzman Institute. So, we have talented people that come up with great ideas, conduct great research, and are able to use that research in an applicable manner with an entrepreneurial mindset to actually translate that into what could be the basis of a great company and product. In addition, we have great AI technology and capabilities across all disciplines. That's something Israel is well known for, anywhere from autonomous driving through autonomous organizing of orange groves, as well as every other type of industry, from the automotive industry through cyber, fintech, as well as in digital health and health tech and pharma as well. And now we're taking more of those AI capabilities into the biotech industry, because our industry and the leaders of our industry, the pharma companies that are the leaders of our industry, are understanding that if you look at the name biotech, but the tech portion of that biotech equation is becoming increasingly important. And that's where Israel is and will continue to play a much stronger role in the future of our industry, because we are one of the leaders in the AI space and the machine learning and computational space. So where the future of our industry is headed, that's where Israel has its sweet spot and will continue to actually play a more significant role. So we're seeing multiple pharma companies come and invest here, like the ones that are partners in AION Labs, but not just limited to those, as well as a whole cluster of good startups starting to be built and grow from Israel. It's very exciting.
I mean, it's interesting you talk about the tech piece of biotech taking on a more significant role. What role do you see this AI playing? I mean, I think you gave us a nice framework of 4 areas to kick off this interview, but you know, how do you see this as it relates to the drug discovery, development,
Sure.
this expansive role, if you will, an expanding role of tech in the healthcare and life science space?
So, I mean, we're touching here in AION Labs just on the R&D side, right? So just on the scientific portion, where we actually, like I said, understand how diseases work and then find new targets, right? So how disease mechanisms actually work, we know very little as an industry about, and as a scientific discipline, about how some of these diseases actually work. We have more insights now with regards to cancer than we had 15, 20 years ago, but we still know very little about the neurodegenerative diseases of the brain relatively to what we will understand in the future. So how do we actually take data and bring new insights into disease mechanism That's at the core, because then that will, again, like I said, the pharma industry knows how to develop drugs. So then they will be able, once they have those insights and are able to identify new targets that they can drug, and they can develop a drug for, they'll be able to develop those drugs. Now, if they're able to use AI and big data capabilities to then test out the drugs in a lab, in animals, replace the animals, because what can you really understand from the way a drug works in a mouse versus the way it's going to work in patients around the world, human patients around the world, then replace those animal models or make them more precise, and then reach better clinical outcomes and clinical phases. That's where AI will actually be able to have that significant impact. And like we've said, like the industry, we always talk about the fact that we've solved cancer many times, but in mice, not in humans. So here we're going to be able to actually find a way to solve a lot of diseases, or to be able to treat a lot of diseases in a much more effective manner in that aspect. And I think our industry is one that's been around for a long time. And we've been doing things in a relatively conservative and similar way for decades. And we're seeing now there's more openness to do things differently and to use AI capabilities to actually speed up those processes, make them more precise, understanding that the value and the potential is out there. And places like AION Labs are a nice sandbox for industry to be able to come and test out a few things, and to be
Yeah.
able to test out doing things in a different manner.
I mean, I think it's fascinating. It reminds me of something a friend said last week. He said, it's shameful that we don't do a million tests in silicon before we test on humans, or let alone mice or any others, right?
Yeah.
And he compared it to the airline industry, the self-driving car industry that does these millions of simulations before actually building the product. And I think that's a lesson that you're kind of describing, and an opportunity there. I think it's also interesting. We think that many of the science is conclusive across so many areas, and yet there's millions of areas we haven't done science, which I think is
Well, I
what
would
you're
actually, I
highlighting.
would actually challenge that statement with regards to the airline industry and the autonomous
Yeah,
driving, because the pharma industry is ultra conservative, and probably rightfully so, because we're more conservative about what we put into our bodies, right? So you do test them out, you do simulate them, just not necessarily on a computer. So you simulate them in a lab, you test them out in the lab, and then you test them out on animals in a very safe environment, very humane manner,
yeah,
increasingly so, in very highly regulated processes where you actually have to produce data and prove it, and then receive approval to go to the next stage. And then you test it out in a very small scale in humans, in a very trusted environment, safe environment as much as can be, until you're ultimately reaching a place where you ultimately are able to treat it into patients.
mm-hmm.
Now, as opposed to autonomous driving, where it might save you a taxi driver, here you can save lives. There's actual
Yeah,
value to bring a drug to the market. And if you're able to use technology to do that in a much rapider pace, scaling up and gaining insights into the way disease works, and scaling up and bringing it to market in a much rapid pace, you could save the world. We saw it just 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where we were able to understand the disease and the way it works, that we discovered for the first time across a couple of continents, and understand the way it works in COVID, and then in the coronavirus, and scale up and develop a model for how to treat that disease and a virus, to treat that virus with a vaccine, and then to be able to scale that out, test it out, and still conservative processes, relatively in the same, not in a simulated manner, but actual the same type of processes, but in a much more rapid and prioritized pace, so that you could bring a vaccine to market, and then you could help save a lot of lives. So it's worth it in the end when you're able to get it done right. So what if I'm able to actually take a little bit more risk in that process, a calculated risk based on big data, based on AI simulations, that we're actually able to do that in a much rapider pace and save lives quicker and save more types of lives. That's something, and treat diseases. That's something that we're trying to do here. Would love to have a small portion of that future industry here based out of AION Labs.
and it seems like the point there is is increasing the speed of discovery and the speed of the process, but also to increasing the scale of what's being evaluated. Is that kind of the other key?
Yeah, correct. And that's where, having a partner here in ION Labs like Amazon with the cloud computational capabilities, and, really the IT capabilities and the compute capabilities that we're just, scratching the tip of the iceberg there with regards to
Yeah,
future compute capabilities. Uh, that's where uh, that's where we can really accelerate the scale up process in these
yeah,
type of elements. And, that's something we're seeing in various elements. And again, a company like Amazon that's gaining insights into the way R&D works and pharma are going to come with those computational solutions and how to scale up much faster. And it's our belief that the earlier these startups understand the full capabilities of a cloud capability and build their models in the right way on the cloud from the beginning, it's going to make their processes downscale to be able to actually scale up much down the stream, be able to actually scale up much faster and much more effectively.
well, and it feels like we're just getting started too with those AI capabilities.
We are,
So
we
they're
are, we are.
powerful, but it's still
Yeah,
early.
yeah,
Awesome,
we
Maddie.
are,
Well, I
we are.
appreciate you
That's for
taking
sure.
time to talk with us and to
Well, thank
share
you,
about
John.
ION Labs and all the great work you're doing. And there's a lot of work to be done. So I appreciate you sharing what you're doing and especially your challenge. We'll definitely share that with our community. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out, healthcareittoday.com, or search for Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcasting applications. Thanks, Maddie.
Thank you, John. Hope to see you in Israel soon.
I hope so too.